What's up YouTube, and welcome back to another Procreate tutorial where today we're going to go ahead and create a flame heart design. Now you're going to want to go ahead and grab all of the requirements, which are completely free, and they are linked in the description down below, and that link will take you over to my Patreon where you can go ahead and grab those requirements. You'll find the canvas size, you will find the palette for today's design so you can follow along with the exact same colors, and as well as 3 brushes that are in a set that I've just put together which we need for today's design. If you've never installed brushes before, I'll make sure to link a helpful video on how to do that. As always, when you're done with today's design, make sure to tag me in it over on Instagram and Facebook. I love seeing your finished creations. And if you didn't already know, I post weekly tutorials here on my YouTube channel, but I also go ahead and post 3 more exclusive tutorials every single month to my Patreon supporters. My patrons have access to a catalogue of over 130 exclusive tutorials at the time of recording, and I add 3 more every single month. So make sure to check that out using the link in the description down below. And with all that said, let's get started. So once you've created your canvas, we're going to go up to our layers. We're going to go ahead and set our background color to the color in the middle of the far right column. Hit the option of done. We're then going to go ahead and on this empty layer here, we're going to go to our colors and double tap in the top left to select white. And then go to your brushes. And you'll have been able to see, of course, from the requirements and from the intro that we have this fire heart brush collection. So it's just a few brushes that I just put together that make up this design today. And we're going to go ahead and use the heart brush. If you've not installed these yet, download the file, and I've got a very helpful video on how you can actually install brushes. It's super easy to do. Now I've got the heart brush. I've got it set to 55%. I'm going to tap away. I'm going to undo that because we want to go ahead and just tap in the middle of our screen as best we can. Then tap on your cursor. And just make sure it is in the center. It does have this additional box sight around it, and I'm not too fussed about that, to be honest. Just as long as it sits in the center of our screen pretty much. You can just go ahead and keep dragging it up until, or down, until you hit the orange lines like so. And if you're not seeing the orange lines, make sure you go to snapping and turn on snapping. And then that way you'll see the orange lines which indicate that it is both aligned vertically and horizontally smack bang in the center of our canvas size. Let's then tap on our cursor when we're done. Let's then go to this layer and tap on it and just bring its opacity all the way down till you can vaguely see it on your own screen. So about 10%, for example. We're going to use it as a bit of an outline, but we do need this layer later on. So we're just going to temporarily bring that down. We are going to go ahead and create a new layer and drag it underneath the heart. And let's finish off the background by going to our colors and go to the top right of the palette. We're going to go to our brush and we're going to go to airbrushing and the soft brush. If you set your brush size to something fairly large, maybe around about 30 to 40%, it does not really matter. I'll go 40 just because I've got a marker for it. I'm just going to go ahead and go lightly across left to right and just blend that down until you've got a bit of a blue bit of color towards the top here. You can always come back to this and tone it down later. Just a little bit of blue. Let's then go ahead and go on to our heart layer here and create a new layer in front of it. We're going to go to our colors and grab the first color in the palette, top left. And your brush wants to be the Fire Heart collection, and we want the Flames edited. Now I know a lot of people have mentioned in the past when I've used the Flames brush that theirs works a little bit differently. So I've just gone ahead and provided you with the exact same brush as I normally do anyway, but this exact same brush. And one thing I want you to see is if I go to my actions and I go to my preferences, if I go to pressure and smoothing, you can see that my pressure sensitivity is just the default. It's bottom left to top right. So I've not changed anything. I've not got any additional settings here. So as long as yours are all the same as well, we should be able to match up. Now this is going to be somewhat pressure sensitive and quite dependent on that. So just make sure if you're not getting the same result, lighten the pressure, just lower it down a little bit. Now we're going to start off with a 20% brush size. And we are first of all just going to lightly sort of try to outline our heart. I want to create like a bit of a long drag there at the bottom. And what we're looking to do is just create little flick offs. Now I am imagining, before we carry on any further, that there is a bit of a wind and it's going this way. So all the flames over here will have this kind of flutter across the heart. And then on this side, they kind of wrap around and then kind of flick off a tiny bit that way. But maybe occasionally you'd have one kind of drag across, something kind of very basically like that. So that's what we're going to try and aim for as we go. And then on this right side, as I mentioned, we'll have a lot more of a drag. So let's go ahead and zoom in down here. Let's just continue following that outline because we are going to, as I said, keep that heart shape. But for now, we just want to go ahead and just make sure we are covering it up with the flames itself. You can vary the brush size. You don't have to use the exact same as me. And we're looking to obviously create all of the random flicks and flow of the fire. And don't overdo it to start with. Start off very, very simple to start with. And keep your pressure fairly light, as I mentioned. You know, you can have gaps and whatnot. And create little hard areas as well where you press a little bit firmer. If you press really firm, you obviously get a massive brush size. So you can see I'm trying to keep it super, super simple just for the minute. And I'm going to run along the edge up here. And then as I start to sort of, as I say, get up towards here, we're going to start to increase the kind of flow. Now, one thing you don't want to do too much of, you don't want to go ahead and sort of create these long lines like this. That's not how fire works. And of course, you want to have like wobbly and jittery lines in there and the random lines as well, just flicking off to the side. We'll continue all the way up because we want to make sure this outline, first of all, is just perfect. So just keep on going, filling out the heart, but ultimately, again, little flick offs to the right, following that kind of curve if you want to. And, you know, you can press a little firmer in here and there just to create this. Now, one thing I then recommend you do is once you get to this kind of peak up here, move into the center here and kind of go round and meet it. So I'm going to start here and just continue along that top edge. And I can go back through it, you know, many times and layer on the color. The more you layer on top of each other, the whiter it will become as well. So you can go back through, and if you, again, you keep it nice and light to start with, you'll have all of those lovely colors to play with. And at the top up here, I'm curving it this way, but also creating the kind of flicks here, these long flowing flames, just so that we can, again, show the wind as such, but also we want them kind of burning off up here at the very, very top. And they don't all have to kind of flow with a curve like this. You can have some curve the opposite way like that. So just vary them up. And again, it's just a matter of just making sure that that outline is nicely covered up. Flowing the fire into it. And then as we kind of meet up towards this side here, we'll curve these ones around and try and just kind of meet into it, what will essentially be like a big cluster of fire. And we can just continue to throw all of the flame out. Now, at the minute, it's looking a little bit more subtle, not quite as sort of ragey as the final result. For now, we are just trying to get that outline in there. So we will come back to that. We'll just keep making our way up and around here for now. And every time I see myself getting a little bit too sort of smooth with the lines, you'll see me just adjust them and create like a wobble, or go back over it and add in another little shimmer of sort and just wrapping it round, and then occasionally just pressing quite firm like that. I say quite firm with a little bit more pressure than I'm currently doing. And then again, we're just going to make our way around this top corner, and in a similar fashion kind of have those curls that kind of flick up like this and meet up into a central point a little bit, but again with the idea that we want to kind of drag it off to the right. I'm just going to keep going here, lots and lots of flicks, lots and lots of randomness. We're going to add in so much random flame in a second. This outline gets us started, and then from there we just build and build and build. Now, if you are feeling like you're in the Valentine's Day theme, or maybe you're listening to this at a completely different time, so it's not relevant at all, but I will have a playlist at the very end of the tutorial, which has got a lot of my Valentine's Day themed tutorials here on YouTube. I've released more on Patreon as well in the past as well. So if you are trying to really sort of seize the kind of the season, I guess, the love season as such, then you can go ahead and check out that playlist at the end, or check out all the tutorials I've got over on my Patreon. So let's keep going. And again, I'm going to then just come back into here. I want to bring this one down a tiny bit. I want this one to be the kind of dominant kind of curve in here. And then from there, I'll leave a gap like so, and then just create all of the kind of curves. And now I'm trying to kind of follow the flow of the flame where we want it to go. I do need that solid outline though, so it's constantly a battle of not trying to get too far ahead of yourself just yet. Get back in there and create all of the texture that we need. So lots more, building that up, and then once you've got your full outline, we can now just start to simply just continue to build on top of it. We're going to add in loads more effects, but you want your outline. Now, once you've got your outline, you can go to your heart, for example. Make sure you now set that back up to 100% opacity or max. Go to your colors, grab the middle of the far right column and just drag it back into the center. Now at this point, we then want to switch back to the color here, top left of the palette. We want to make sure we go back to the flame layer that we created. And now at this stage, it's just a matter of adding in lots and lots more flame. Now you want to take your time again and get the angles right. This brush has like a bit of a shape to it, and you want to create all of these kind of flick offs and white patches and so on, and just really add in a lot of wiggle, and then also try and keep it random like that. Lovely little breakouts. Keep all of those squiggles and wiggles and see what you can come up with. Letting that flame slowly start to move that way and just building up a little bit more direction and purpose over here. Now we are going to use a slightly bigger brush size in just a second. It's just for a moment I want to get some kind of fine lines in here, showing a few of the curves and the flicks and just emphasizing those flames on that edge. As I mentioned, let's jump to the 45% marker, because here we can simply just go ahead and go like really crazy with it and start to emphasize the scale of the flames. And we've got all of those lovely small ones that we just created, and now you can get in there and just take your time to go over your brush a couple of times. If you don't like the angle of the brush as it came out, you may want to undo it, and then just creating all of these. And I'm just going to keep going, and I'm going to run a few more a little bit further away. Now trying to emphasize the scale of this whole flame up here, and occasionally you may see something that you like or dislike, so just keep trial and erroring it. But you may end up like doing a little dash like that a little bit further away. That's fine, but I would also try and reserve those in a minute for the very, very small brush size that we're going to use as well. So we're just building out that fire, letting it get nice and big. And a lot of the time you'll see me constantly keep tapping and then undoing, tapping and then undoing, and just seeing what kind of result, especially the angle of the pen as well. That will help a lot in creating the cool little effects, but also it may come out like really wide and you might not like that kind of aesthetic. I know for me, I don't particularly like it as well. Now you will notice that I will start to keep this side over here a little bit thinner in terms of the amount of flame in comparison. I want to try and go ahead and, let that right side really kind of have that long drag off to the side. I'm going to just jump back to 20% so I can just fill out this area a little bit more with even just a few little purposeful flames like here, just a couple. And they can flare off onto the left. That's not a problem either. You can have them wiggle their way out there, but you want a little bit of that kind of wind and purpose across. And now with that 20% brush size, I'm going to try and go in at a much more kind of angled line here and just try and create some additional lines that just contrast the ones that we were initially creating and just have them all sort of wisp away over here. And then you can go ahead and bring the brush size down to, I've got a marker here of 4%, and you can start to just create some really purposeful smaller break-offs, these little cracks and whatnot that the fire would create. We do have a brush, as you can see from the group, called Sparks, which we're going to use in a second. For now, it's just a little bit of these smaller brush size little flicks in here. Also, make this edge a bit more untidy, create lots and lots of little dashes here too. Yes, the fire is raging this way, but we can also go ahead and introduce some flame here inside the heart, overlapping a tiny bit too. Not too consistent, but just a few more. And then here I can go ahead and create like a little bit of a purposeful little bit of detail. That's looking quite smart, quite happy with that. We do want this area up here to end up having a good amount of kind of white in the fire here. So you may need to go ahead and go over kind of these large chunky bodies of flame and just add in with this smaller brush size or a larger brush size, either, whatever you feel will look best or fit the space a little bit more. I'm using the smaller one just so I can be a bit more precise in these areas and also purposely tackle where I want to emphasize the white of the flame, leaving this beautiful fiery edge up here. Down here, I'm just going to spend a little bit longer just adding in a tiny bit more on here. Again, although I want this edge down here to be a little bit thinner in comparison, I don't want it to not have any detail. Again, a couple more little sort of flicks and try and avoid repetition. You don't want to create dashes and pops and cracks in the fire just yet that are too repetitive, little lines and dashes. I'm having to constantly add in a few and then undo them because they look far too repetitive. And then here I'm just going to create some lots and lots of little flick offs, like there's a bit of a breeze catching it, sort of flowing the fire all the way over that way. We'll go down to 20%. We'll create some internal kind of flames as well. Here, for example, we can go ahead and create some that maybe loop up and around a tiny bit more. Keep going until you layer up the fire. Now, of course, there's got to be a moment where you take a look at yours against mine and just triple check that you haven't added too much, because we don't want to you don't need to follow with me in terms of adding in more and more and more if yours is already at that level and is good to go. So just bear that in mind. I've gone up to the 45% where I'm just going to keep my pressure super, super light here and just introduce like a couple of little sort of additional fiery lines, keeping the pressure extremely light, but just having a few very red, almost like lines in there. Maybe another one here too off of the center. Maybe another up the top there. A couple of little dashes just to break up the kind of solid, perfect edge. We want to make sure it's got a little bit of unique characteristic to it along the side there. And then maybe we end up with like a little bit of a one. We want it to be nice and random, so let's maybe do like a little line there. And then I might add in a few more at the top here, a couple more wiggles, a couple more areas of light red that's just cracking off at the very top edge. So yes, you can see you can get really carried away with it and continue to build it up and up and up. And you can just wiggle your pen along the top of it occasionally as well, just to see how it comes out. It might actually start to flow quite nicely. You know, wiggle it, squiggle it, layer it on. I'm going to add in a few more little lines up here, just a little bit of purposeful red tone up here if I can manage it. Lovely. And then again, I'm just going to try and just create like a bit of a purposeful kind of flick. There we go. Maybe a little something like that. So the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is just bring in some lighting. So we're going to go to our layer. We're going to swipe it to the left and duplicate it. We're going to change the blend mode from normal to the option of pin light. It's right towards the bottom. And to get this going, you have to go up to your adjustments, Gaussian blur, zoom out a tiny bit, and then go from left to right. And you want this big kind of reddish glow to it. So around about 40 to 45% will do the trick. And then when you're done, go back to your layer, swipe that one to the left and duplicate it as well. And now you've been able to really bring in some lovely red tone. It's now where we can go ahead and start adding in some crackly kind of detailing as well. So we're going to go ahead and tap on the heart itself, create a new layer and change the blend mode from normal to add. We can go to our colors and grab the top of the second column. And our brush, will change it to the Flames Sparks brush. I've got a few different sizes. I've got 20% for example, just to start with. And if you get down into here and you tap and just drag a little bit, you can end up with these lovely little sparks in the fire, just showing like a bit of crackle. Now, notice if I drag it, it doesn't really do much. This brush is almost like a stamp to a degree. We don't want to overuse it, and we don't want to also, create like a long line. So occasionally just drag, and you can press with a lot of pressure, and you'll eventually get some quite large sparks. If you press, should I say, with a little bit of light pressure, you'll get some lovely little small crackles in here. So you can really vary it up if you need to. I'm going to add in a couple in there too. And we're just trying to find like a couple of areas that are particularly like white, and then just add in that little crackle of sparks, etc. And we want to go ahead and make sure that these are also added up towards the top as well, with a good amount towards the top. So we're going to add in a few more there, a few more up here too. Just tapping and dragging just a tiny bit, varying up the pressure every time I drag, just to see if I can add in something a little bit different. If you get any areas of repetition, you can always go ahead and go in there with the eraser and just eliminate a few of the sparks from the brush if you need to. And another color we can go ahead and utilize is actually the red tone at the top of the third column. This one won't come out quite like those ones. You'll have this much more, really vibrant tone to it. We can set the brush size a bit bigger. You can go up to the 45% marker that I've got here. A couple of random dashes in the flame will look fantastic, just breaking off and just to showing the uncontrollable kind of fire nature to this, of course. A couple more a little bit higher with the red tone. They'll look like they're a little bit further away potentially. A couple more up here. A couple big crack-offs up there too. That'll look lovely. Breaks up there. We can switch to the orange tone again, top of the first column, and add in some variety in here with some slightly different tones again. Feel free though to jump down to something really small, like a 4%, and really spend some time, really detailing in here. If you can just keep dragging and tapping like a madman, and just keep going and adding in so much crisp little areas of detail, and it will break up these kind of really smooth flames that we've got here, especially with the very, very, very small brush size that we've got here now, about 4%. A couple off to the edge, and it will just really bring in some detail. And when people look at it, it won't just look like you've gone mad with the brush strokes of the flames. I've gone to 11% now. It will detail this to a level where you can kind of see a lot of granular detail, and granular detail is a lot of the time what makes people sort of think twice about an image, whether or not it's just a few simple techniques, or is actually if they sat down and added a lot of detail purposely in here. So I'm just going through the fire now, varying it up with the different colors. So we're currently still using the orangey tone, and I'm just tapping away in here. I'm not trying to do it everywhere. Of course, you'll be able to see down here, I've not really touched it too much. I could have a couple of sparks off from there just to give it a little bit more of a almost fantasy look to it. I'm going to switch my color though to the yellow again, the top of the second column. Vary the brush size again to 20%. Get in there. A little bit more crackling in there too. And spend your time here on this stage if you can. It will look really, really cool and nice and detailed as well. Now I'm going to go ahead and go back to my heart layer. Now I've added in all the detail. On the heart layer, I'm just going to go ahead and grab the first color again, top left of the palette, and go back to the flames edited. And I'm just going to continue adding in a little bit more kind of wispiness in here, like a few break-offs of flame running inside the heart, just to give a little bit of a blend to the edge. So it's not too much of a solid, like here's the white and then here's the inside. A little bit like up here. I could do with maybe adding like a couple of twirls and curls in here of just random, just scattering of the flame. A little something like that, just to break it up a bit more. That looks a lot better to me. Now we can slowly build up some additional textures in here. We can go ahead and go to our layers and create a brand new layer at the top. We can go ahead and change the blend mode from normal to the option of hard lights. And if we go to our colors, we're going to grab this tone here. It's top of the second column from the right. Your brush wants to be set to the option of elements and clouds. I've got the opacity set to 41%. I've got a size of 33%. And what you can do is you can very lightly add in this kind of smoky-like texture to here. Vary your pressure. Now, by all means, add in a chunk like this, like I've just done initially with like a good amount of shape to it. This, you want to kind of do less if you can. You know, less is more in this particular instance. So add in like a little bit up here at 33 and then maybe bring it down to like a 6%. Is that 6? It is. And let's just add in a few little tiny areas of a little bit of smoke and just a little bit of extra, you know, everything going on in this scene. And I really like this additional patch down here. I think it looks really cool, but I'm not going to overdo it. I'm going to keep it really to a minimum for now. Now, another thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and grab our heart again. We're going to swipe it to the left and duplicate it and then bring it down. So we've got the additional version of our flame heart. We'll tap on it and clipping mask it to that blue that we created at the top. If we change the blend mode from normal to the option of right at the bottom, we're going to use divide. Everything will end up with a little bit of a more blue hue to it. But if we go to our adjustments and gauge and blur, if we swipe from left to right, you'll end up with this kind of purpley blue, like a really fiery hot fire at the top here. So hopefully my camera's not sort of overexposing it for you. But I'm going to go up to around about, say, 20% on the gauge and blur there. And it only shows on top of the blue up here. So if you're getting a lot of blue, for example, you can grab your blue layer and then maybe just grab your cursor, for example, and use freeform and maybe bring it down, bring it up. It's totally up to you how much you want to kind of bring in of those purpley tones. So it's attached to there. You can just pick and choose where you want it to be. And now I'm going to go ahead and just add some color to this heart here that we created. I am going to go ahead and tap on the layer and alpha lock it. I'm going to go to my colors and grab let's grab the red tone first of all, top of the third column. Your brush still wants to be clouds. And again, we're still going to rock with the 41% opacity. I think we could probably go for something like a 16% on the brush size, I think. Or if not slightly bigger, maybe 20. And just wrap a little bit of red on the inside here. And we're just going to add in a little bit of texture to the inside of the heart. And I was just triple checking it was alpha locked, and it is. So we're just adding in a little bit of kind of smoky like texture, just the inside of the heart. And a little bit of texture more so. I'm just keeping it really light as I go towards the center because I want the center here to be dark. From there, we then go to our colors and switch it out to the orange tone, which is the top of the first column. Definitely bring that brush size down now to about 11% and just round the edges up here. Start to layer in a bit more of a brighter orangey tone. Leave the red towards the bottom. Just tapping away, adding in a little bit of texture and color. Lovely. And then we'll go to our colors and grab yellow, top of the second column, and then adding in a little bit of yellow almost right towards the edges and underneath some of those lovely white areas of our fiery flames up here. So just tapping to add in texture, and you should end up with like a little bit of a heart that resembles the red of a heart, but it's now on fire kind of vibe. So that should be sort of now quite apparent. Now we can go ahead and go to our heart here. This is totally optional, this particular layer now. So if we go ahead and tap on the heart, you can go to your adjustments and go to liquify. You could go ahead and change the option here to say 12 right or 12 left, either. Set your size to maybe something around about, say, a little bit less than that, maybe 25 to 30%. You can see my other settings here at the bottom, and you could just run your pen a little bit through here. Now, to be honest, you want your momentum and distortion a little bit higher, so you can let go and then it just continues to flow like this. Now, you may or may not want to do this, again, because your flames you've purposely drawn in at this stage. You may want to switch to 12 right, for example, and just give it a bit of variety, but it's totally up to you if you want to get a little bit more of a waviness to some of those. Now, one thing I would avoid is something like this, like a proper perfect spiral. You want to go back to the option of reconstruct here, and then just reconstruct that back into play a little bit, so you can just reverse it basically. But some of them actually look like they do need a little bit of a twirl to me. So for example here, not a twirl that leans backwards, but if you run your pen like it's a brush stroke, you can just distort it a little bit and create a little bit more of a wobble and a shimmer to it. A little something like that, just adding in some lovely flicks. Switch between 12 left and 12 right, and the size, make it a little bit smaller here and there, and just see where you maybe can go ahead and kind of drag it around a bit and just see what you come up with. Don't overdo this. You don't want the twirls. You don't want too much of like a purposeful kind of rippling kind of effect to this. You want to just run your pen over and just seeing what kind of other things you can just create that you maybe couldn't create potentially manually with the brush strokes. So maybe you'll get some additional effects that look quite cool. But otherwise you can just hit reset, change it back, see what it looks like, and just make the decision there. Another thing we can do, again completely optional, we could add a little bit of a reflection here as if it's on water potentially. So you do want to make sure that your heart up here has just got a little bit of breathing space. So potentially you could move it up if you want to have a larger reflection. All you'd need to do is grab from this layer here, swipe from left to right on everything above, grab your cursor and just move it potentially up a tiny bit if you want the reflection. Or you can focus your heart in the center. It's totally up to you. However, all we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go to our 3-finger gesture by swiping down with 3 fingers and go to the option here of copy all. We're going to go right to the top of our layers. So we'll create a brand new layer right at the very top. We will tap away. We'll swipe down with 3 fingers and go to paste. And that will have pasted in, if we go to the layer, your whole design on one new layer. Now, one thing you can then do is if we go ahead and we, first of all, change the blend mode from normal to the option of lighten. Lighten eliminates all of the dark tones. So now if I grab my cursor and I flip it vertically, all of those dark tones have disappeared because of the blend mode. So just in case you didn't know that. And then you can go ahead and grab freeform. You could go ahead and squish this down. So with freeform, just squish it down and then bring it down again a tiny bit further. Down to around about here. Leave a gap at the bottom of your heart if you can. Then tap on your cursor when you're done. What we'll then do is go ahead and go to our smudge tool. Tap on our smudge tool and we'll use artistic and the leatherwood brush. I've got the opacity set to 65%. Size will vary because we need small sizes and large sizes. Now, if you struggle to smudge horizontally, I recommend go up to your actions, go to the canvas tab, turn on the drawing guide and edit that drawing guide and just make sure it's set to 2D grid. You can set this to like 500 like I normally do as we sort of make our way through it. It doesn't really matter, it's not critical. Just hit done and then go to your layer and tap on it and make sure it uses the drawing assist. That way I can't smudge unless it's horizontally. So back here, I can just smudge out a few of these lines here, just trying to create some water ripples and variety. Don't get rid of it all completely. Vary your brush size as well. Get down to like a 1% for the distant elements and the distant kind of shimmers on this water. Don't be afraid to push a line quite far as well. And then as you get a bit closer, go to like a 3%. So just a little bit of variety in the smudge here, just to add in those kind of watery lines that make their way away and are just showing because of the light source. Then what we'll go ahead and do is we will go to the layer, swipe it to the left and duplicate it, change the blend mode from normal to the option of add, and then go ahead and tap on this layer, add a mask to it, and then tap on the mask and invert it. So currently, this layer is completely hidden. And that's on purpose so that on this layer, we can make sure if we're on the mask here, and your color now needs to be white in the top left by selecting white. If you then go to your brush, and you tap on your brush and make sure you switch it to artistic and leatherwood as well. Go to 50% opacity and set your size to about 2% because that was the middle ground. Whatever you draw in now with white reveals that add layer. So if I go ahead and start to draw in here, for example, I can reveal like a little bit of a brighter shimmer here So just a few horizontal lines here and there, just to add in some bright tones among these kind of ripples on this water kind of effect here. Just a little bit like this, a little bit randomly at horizontal points throughout here. Now, this looks pretty messy at the minute, but what we're going to do is we're going to go to the layers. We're going to pinch all three together of our little reflection. It will stay set to lighten, which is a good thing. We're going to go to our adjustments. We're going to go to the option of Gaussian blur and swipe from left to right and just blur that out around about 5%. And then go to your adjustments again, tap on it, go to motion blur and drag down in a vertical fashion until you get a little something like this. So around about, say, 19% there. So you could do it a little bit less, you could do a little bit more. I'm going to go down to around about, we want that drag, so we're going to go 20% and tap on our adjustments when we're done. And then we're going to go ahead and add some ripples again by going to our adjustments and go to Liquify. We're going to set the blend mode to push. Size wants to be fairly small, around about, say, 10% just to start with, and check out the rest of the settings here. And then all you want to do is make sure you're pushing horizontally through here to just create a little bit of a broken down reflection. You can bring up the momentum if you really want to push the line and then vary your brush size up and down. 9% now, but just varying it up. Have an area here where you get a bit sort of adventurous and really push the line away like that. For example, I've gone up to 18% just to give it some variety. And of course, the closer you are to the bottom of the canvas, you want those lines to be a bit smaller. My momentum's a little bit high now, so I'm going to bring it down to 30 and just keep making the brush size smaller as I get a bit further away, down to like a 7%, and just keep smudging that out, pushing it horizontally using Liquify, just to create a little bit of a broken down image here. Just keep going horizontal, breaking it down. And you should end up with a quite soft effect, but now all of those sort of groundwork that we did in terms of the add blend mode and the smudge with the leatherwood will now really help your design have some nice variety in there, and it should nicely look like a bit of water, to be honest. And then when you're done, you can go ahead and go to your adjustments, tap on the layer. We'll add a mask to it once again, and we'll just make sure on the mask here, you have your color set to black by double tapping at the bottom of the disc. Make your brush the airbrushing and the soft brush. Set your size to around about, say, 15% and just fade out the corners. Now, currently the layer is drawing assisted, so make sure you tap on it. Tap here, for example, go to drawing assist and turn it off, and then go back to the mask. And you just want to kind of just fade out the edges here. So keep your pressure nice and light and just kind of feather out the bottom of the canvas a little bit. Just sort of focusing the sort of main reflection to the center. And then there's one last layer to create. It's a very simple one. We'll create a brand new layer. We'll go to our blend mode and change it to add. We'll go to our color and grab the first color in the palette, top left. Soft airbrush still, and roughly around about, say, 13%. You just want to tap a few times kind of towards the base of the heart here, just brightening up this kind of connection between the two areas. And then if you go up to your actions, turn off your drawing guide, tap away, pinch with two fingers, go full screen with 4, and you end up with today's finished design. So as always, make sure to drop a like on the video, drop a comment as well, letting me know what you thought of today's design, and of course subscribe to the channel for weekly Procreate tutorials. But as I mentioned in the tutorial, I've actually got a catalogue of over 130 exclusive tutorials, and they're all available to my supporters over on Patreon. You can get access to every single one of those tutorials when you become a patron, and you can actually check out my website before you join to see all of the designs of those tutorials, just to make sure that the content is fit for you. You also get sneak peeks, early access, and much, much more. So check out the link to my Patreon in the description down below. And also, as I mentioned in today's video, if you want to go ahead and crack on with some more sort of Valentine's Day themed tutorials, you'll be able to find the playlist on screen right now over on the right hand side for that, as well as a recommended video. So make sure to check that out. And as always, enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.